Millions of years ago, there was a period lost in the depths of time, long before dinosaurs even stepped onto the stage. The Carboniferous period. About 360 million years ago, the Earth was completely different from the one we know today. Imagine a tropical planet where giant ferns stretched toward the sky and enormous tree roots intertwined with vast swamps. The air was so humid that you could practically smell the soil with every breath you took. But the strangest thing was the amount of oxygen in the air. Today, the oxygen we breathe is around 21%, right? In the Carboniferous, that ratio reached up to 35%. The atmosphere was like gunpowder, ready to ignite. A small spark could set an entire forest ablaze. This extreme oxygen level was an incredible source of energy for living beings. So much so that some insects and reptiles reached unbelievable sizes. Life in this era was completely different from what we're used to. There were no mammals and no birds. Instead, giant dragonflies, centipedes the size of cars, and winged beasts that shook the skies ruled the depths of swampy forests. The world had turned into a massive experimental field filled with life forms reshaping its boundaries. The Carboniferous might be one of the strangest, most fascinating, yet most unsettling chapters in Earth's history. It was as if the planet had leaped right out of a science fiction movie. Because nature had practically forgotten its limits. For example, giant dragonflies with wings almost as long as a child's arms glided through the sky. Their scientific name, Meganeura. Their wingspan reached up to 70 centimeters, and they were as agile as hawks. While swiftly gliding through the air, they caught their prey within milliseconds. They were the absolute predators of the Carboniferous skies. And it wasn't just predators, graceful winged giants also fluttered around. Butterflies called Paleocharis theophrast were nearly 10 times the size of modern butterflies. Their wings were almost as thin as lace but bright enough to catch the light. As they glided through the humid forest air, the golden scales on their wings would catch the sunlight and shimmer like tiny rainbows with every flap. These butterflies were harmless. Their only concern was feeding on plant sap. But once you stepped onto the ground, things changed. Because waiting there was Pulmonoscorpius. The largest scorpion in our planet's history, about 70 centimeters long. Which made it more than 3 times bigger than modern scorpions. Its outer shell was like armor. It captured prey with its massive claws, then delivered the final strike with its venomous tail. You'd hardly notice it, but it would certainly notice you. And in the midst of all this chaos, the undisputed giant of the land emerged. Arthropleura, the centipede the size of a car. Yes, you heard that right. These massive creatures could reach up to 2.5 meters long, crawling across the forest floor like an armored train. This creature was so big that it wasn't attacked directly. Some researchers believe that even giant scorpions didn't dare mess with it. Imagine, during that time, the largest creature you could encounter while walking was a type of invertebrate. If you were lucky, you'd only see it quietly chewing leaves. But if you heard those sounds in the dark, your heart might stop for a few seconds. We could call the Carboniferous world nature's experiment with giant proportions. High oxygen levels allowed living creatures to grow to astonishing sizes. Everything was bigger, thicker, and louder. Earth was truly experiencing an age of giants. Of course, this mesmerizing era wasn't going to last forever. Around 335 million years ago, a giant chess game began on Earth's surface. Continents slowly moved toward each other until they finally merged into a single supercontinent called Pangaea. This collision didn't only change maps, it disrupted the climate, the atmosphere, and even the balance of life. The once humid, misty, oxygen-rich Carboniferous world suddenly began to cool and dry. As vegetation decreased, oxygen levels in the atmosphere rapidly dropped as well, and those giant insects couldn't adapt to the sudden change in breathing conditions. And the result? Their age faded away quietly like the last flicker of a candle. The Carboniferous period ended around 299 million years ago. It left behind burned forests, shrinking creatures, and the foundations of a brand new world. But this end was also a beginning. Because right after, one of the harshest chapters in Earth's history took the stage. The Permian period. In the Permian, a new act in history began. Almost all land masses had merged into a single supercontinent called Pangaea, surrounded by a vast ocean known as Panthalassa. A massive continent standing alone in an endless sea. This was the stage of the Permian. At first, Earth still felt the cold breath of an ice age, but over time, things changed. For around 50 million years, temperatures continued to rise. The climate became drier. Giant forests gave way to dusty plains and barren landscapes. This new world was both a test and an opportunity for life. Because evolution was once again saying, "The stage is yours." And this time, prehistoric reptiles appeared as the leading actors. Some creatures from this period might look like dinosaurs at first glance, but they actually belonged to species even older than the ancestors of dinosaurs, closer to mammals. For example, Diplocalus, about 1 meter long, had a boomerang-shaped head. Scientists still don't fully know why. Some say it helped it change direction easily in water. Others say it was nothing more than evolution showing off. Then came Dimetrodon. You've probably seen this iconic creature with a giant sail on its back. It could grow up to 5 meters long, and that sail-like structure was likely used for regulating body temperature. Some researchers believe it was also used for display. Dimetrodon was the most feared predator around 290 million years ago, in the early Permian. But over time, its throne was challenged. In the Middle Permian, therapsids, mammal-like reptiles, took the stage. With sharp teeth, powerful jaws, and more advanced body structures, they stood out. Some were massive herbivores, others ruthless hunters. For example, the 5-meter-long Doeuterosaurus was nearly as big as a crocodile. But the agile 1-meter-tall Lycaenops was small yet deadly, a true prehistoric wolf. The Permian world was the age of monsters before dinosaurs. There was no T-Rex yet, but nature was already rehearsing. As the Permian progressed, completely different creatures stepped into the spotlight. In this age without dinosaurs, the ancestors of mammals slowly began to dominate the planet. Among them, the most striking group was the Gorgonopsians, creatures that seemed as if they belonged in a fantasy film. They were like prehistoric versions of giant bears, strong muscles, sharp teeth, and a truly predatory appearance. But not all were monsters. Some Gorgonopsians were so tiny they weighed less than a kilogram. Others from the same family weighed nearly a ton. Some were herbivores, others carnivores. In short, evolution had turned nature into a testing ground. These creatures even began to specialize their teeth. Some could crush bones, while others were shaped perfectly for chewing plants. This is where the foundations of mammals were laid, in the evolution of jaws and teeth. But like all good things, this too didn't last forever. Around 252 million years ago, the darkest page in Earth's history opened. The Great Dying, the most devastating mass extinction the planet has ever seen, began. It was such a catastrophe that life on Earth nearly vanished. About 90% of marine species and 70% of land species went extinct. So what happened that left Earth in such ruins? Scientists believe the culprit lies in the north, in what is now Siberia. At that time, massive volcanic eruptions called the Siberian Trap spewed lava for millions of years. Sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide released into the sky poisoned the atmosphere. They blocked sunlight and temperatures dropped. Then suddenly began to rise. The oceans acidified, waters lost oxygen, and a chain reaction of death began. This event was so massive that, according to some studies, it took Earth more than 10 million years to recover. Nature essentially hit the reset button. The Great Dying wasn't just an end, it was, as always, a new beginning. Because from the ashes of this extinction emerged new species that would later hand the stage over to the dinosaurs. In 2001, scientists made a surprising discovery. They suggested that during the Permian-Triassic extinction, a giant object from space may have struck Earth. When researchers examined carbon samples trapped in rocks, they found helium and argon in ratios that could only have come from space. This evidence made a meteor or comet impact possible, but not certain. According to estimates, this celestial object was 6 to 12 kilometers wide, large enough to put Mount Everest to shame. The impact would have released energy 1,000,000 times greater than the largest earthquakes ever recorded. And all of this happened while Earth was already suffocating under massive Siberian lava eruptions. Nature had pulled the trigger with both hands. This event, along with the Permian-Triassic extinction 252 million years ago, opened a new chapter in Earth's history. The Mesozoic Era. This era lasted 186 million years and included 3 unforgettable acts: Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. In the Triassic, the world was still recovering. The supercontinent Pangaea was still united. Surrounded, as mentioned earlier, by the endless ocean Panthalassa. The climate was generally hot and dry. The inner parts of the continents were covered by giant deserts.